Hey guys, a lot of people asked me to do a video on my placement and the products that I use to achieve this look and how I kept my balayage highlights from bleeding onto my base color. So I started out with using the Kevin Murphy Color Me Freestyle Clay Lightener with 20 volume developer for my highlights. And then for my base color, I did the Kevin Murphy Color Me 8-2 series, which is the beige, with 10 volume developer. I started out by sectioning my client's hair into 4 quadrants and just doing a simple root retouch application with the 8-2 all over the head. So now that I've done the root retouch all over, I'm going to go in and start with my balayage. So the bottom section is angled higher at the ear, going down towards the base of the neck. And what I'm doing is I want to make this very first piece of balayage. That way when they wear their hair up, they've got some lightness in their hair. And then once I get that done, I'm going to go over to the next side. I'm going to do the exact same thing. And make sure you've got a lot of towels with you because you're going to be wiping your hands quite often. So again, this next section is going to be balayaged. And then as I move up the head, the next section is going to be a dark section. My darker pieces are going to be, or my darker sections are going to be a little bit bigger than the balayage sections, just because when I looked at the picture, to me it looks like there's more dark than there is lightness in there, so I want to make sure that's how it is when I'm applying the color to the hair. So this section is going to be the dark 8-2. I'm going to make sure that it's nice and saturated so that way there's no warm or splotchy marks in it. And then I'm going to kind of twist it over to the side and make sure it kind of lays in the middle away from the balayage piece that I just did. And then the same on the other side. The next section is going to be a dark piece on the other section, on the other side. Again, making sure that it's quite a bit larger than the balayage section I just did underneath. And make sure it's nice and saturated, and then it's going to go over towards the middle, away from the balayage piece underneath it, so that way there's no bleed marks. So this next section that I'm going to do, I'm still going with the angle that I was going with, except this, I'm going to weave this, and the part that I weave out on the top is going to be dark, and then the bottom is going to be a balayage piece. I like to do these two techniques together in the hair because it doesn't leave, it gives you a different dimension throughout the hair, and you don't have just slices of balayage. And then I'm going to make sure that I lay that on top of the other balayage piece that I just did, so that way it doesn't bleed. And I'm going to do the exact same thing on the other side. I'm going to weave out the darker pieces on top, and then the bottom weave is going to be a balayage. What I like about the Kevin Murphy Clay Lightener is that it hardens on the outside but still lightens on the inside, so therefore it helps with the bleed marks and helps you from getting those warm splotchy spots in the hair. because it kind of creates a shell around it. So once I get that balayage section, I'm going to lay that on top of the other balayage piece on the bottom, so that way I'm keeping it away from the darker color. Again, you got to be super clean with this. So this next piece is going to be a dark piece, and that's going to include that woven section that I had previously. Make sure it's nice and saturated, and I'm going to set it on top of the other darker pieces to try to keep it away from the lightener. You also got to make sure that your client is sitting super still for this, because if they're like a chatty Cathy and their head's moving around, or they're like a bobblehead, this isn't going to work, because what's going to happen is they're going to start moving their head, and it's going to start, the lightener and your base color is going to start mixing together, and then you are going to get those warm bleed marks. So if you have someone who can't sit still, I don't recommend this color for them. So I always tell my clients ahead of time, like, you've got to be super still for this if you want it to look good. And then I'm doing the same thing in this section. I'm just making this section, this piece, a dark piece. And I'm going to set it in the middle on top of the other dark pieces. So now what I'm going to do, since I'm above like the occipital bone, I'm going into the crown of the head. I'm going to join those two quadrants and make it one. Because what it's going to do is you're going to kind of make like a veil that kind of lays over the top of the head. And in doing this, it kind of gives you a little bit different balayage look. So therefore you've got different types of lightness throughout the whole head. So this this first section right here is going to be a dark piece. And I'm going to lay that down right in the middle on top of my other darker sections. This next piece is going to be a balayage section. It's going to be kind of wide, but that's totally okay. Just because it won't lay all together, so it'll be like a baby light, very small baby lights kind of popping through when it's all nice and dried and fixed. This is also my first video, so I apologize for standing in front of the camera a lot. I should have put it on the left hand side. So here I'm going to make sure that I kind of lay that balayage over to the side just a little bit to try to keep it as much off of that bottom low light as I possibly can. And then this next section is going to be a dark section, a dark piece. So I'm pretty much just alternating light and dark and light and dark. Just making my darker sections larger than the lighter sections. Then I'm going to lay that on top of the other darker piece, trying to keep it off of that balayage section. And just go back and check and make sure that there's no bleed marks or anything. This next section, it's going to be another darker piece.
Hold on, I'm gonna open the door.
Sorry, I apologize about that. Alright, so that's my dark piece. Alright, so in this piece, what I'm doing is I'm doing that weave again. I'm going to balayage the bottom part, and then the top part is going to be the darker piece. And I'm sorry that I'm standing in front of the way again. Like I said, should have positioned the camera on the left-hand side. And once I get that balayaged, I'm going to lay it gently over to the side. So that way it's not on top of the darker piece. And then I'm going to have my darker section. Making sure it's nice and saturated. And then once I get that completely covered, I'm going to lay it over to the side on top of the other darker pieces. And the very top, I'm going to weave out again, and then the bottom is going to be the baby lights, and then the top portion is going to be the darker color. Once again, make sure that you're being super clean with this and you're laying the hair down gently and not just like dropping it. Also making sure that your client is staying super still for this. And then this is the dark section. And once I get this saturated, I just kind of like roll it up and just kind of let it sit on the top of the head and keep it off of that balayage piece. And I'm just going back and checking and making sure that it's hardening and it's not on any of the darker sections, so that way there's none of those bleed marks. So in the front, I'm going to do what's considered a herringbone pattern or zigzag pattern. So I am going to angle this like going away so that way when they wear their hair up. So this first section I'm going to do dark because most of the time on a human head that's going to be like your little baby hairs. And I don't ever like to balayage baby hairs because they tend to kind of get splotchy. So this next diagonal is going to be a balayage. And so that way when they wear their hair up, they've got that lightness. And what I'm also doing in the front is I'm taking my balayage almost completely to the root, right at the face, just to give that lightness at the face. When I was being taught this technique, they called this the money shot or the money key. I don't know if that's the actual technical name for it, but that's what they told us. So anyway, again, I'm going way up close to the root, right by the face. So that way they've got that lightness right around their face. And then I'm kind of angling it down when I, like, towards the ear. And then I'm going to set that down nice and gently and not let that just flop. So that way it stays off of that darker piece on the underneath. And then this next section is where I start the herringbone pattern. I'm going to go straight across. This section is going to be quite a bit thicker than my balayage section because this is going to be a dark piece. This is going to be with the A2. Make sure it's nice and saturated. And I'm going to lay it gently away from that balayage piece. And then this next section, I'm going to diagonal again. It's going to be up by my hairline. So I'm going to continue doing the technique where I go up higher at almost to the root, right at the face. So she's got that lightness right around her face. And I apologize that it's blurry. I don't know why. There we go. So like you can see, I brought that balayage up pretty close to the root right at her face. And then when I lay this down, I kind of put my brush up underneath it and kind of bubble it up just a little bit so that way it's not laying on her face, because I've totally bleached someone's eyebrows out by an accident one time when I first started doing hair. It's pretty funny. I had to tone her. I had to tint her eyebrows. But this next section right here is a dark piece. Making sure it's nice and saturated. And then what I'm doing a little bit different right here is I'm making sure that I've got it sectioned in her part. And I'm going to weave here, but the weave that's on the top is going to be baby lights this time. And the underneath is going to be dark, because I want there to be lightness in her part. So I'm making sure that that dark piece is nice and saturated, and I lay it down on top of the other dark pieces. And I'm doing this, continuing the same thing as before. I'm making sure I'm going up close to the root right near her hairline. And this just kind of gives you that veil again of the little baby lights kind of peeking through the darkness right here. And I apologize about my hair in the video. I had just got done doing 2 weddings, and it was homecoming for our college and our high school in our town. So it was a busy day. It was a Saturday. Also, the Kevin Murphy color line is a honey-based color, and it spreads really easily. Alright, so in this next section, I'm going to do the exact same thing. The first diagonal is going to be like your baby hairs on a normal human head, and I'm going to make sure those are dark. I don't want to balayage those. Make sure it's super saturated. And then this next diagonal is going to be a balayage. And like again, I'm making sure that I am bringing the balayage up close to the root, up near the hairline, near the face, and angling it back down towards the ear. The mixing ratio for the lightener and the color, for the lightener, it's 1 to 2. 1 part lightener, 2 parts developer, and then the color is 1 to 1.5. And so this next section is going to be a dark piece. And this is the section that is a little bit thinner because it's the part on Miss Barbara's hair. That's my mannequin's name. So you're not going to have as many balayage pieces on this side. So this top section, I'm going to do the weave. And the part that I weave on top is going to be my baby lights, and the bottom. So this section is my dark. This is what I wove on the bottom. And then this section is what I wove out on the top, and this is going to be the baby lights. Sorry about that, guys. My mom's trying to call me. And I want to make sure I go up close to the hairline on this. And I'm just being real gentle when I lay it down. And so once I get done with this, I'm going to let it process for another 20 minutes, and then I'm going to emulsify it all together at the shampoo bowl with a little bit of shampoo, and that way I don't really have it. That'll kind of tone those baby lights a little bit. And then here's what it looks like while it was processing. And then this next picture is of what it turned out to look like. So, yeah, once again, I hope you guys enjoyed. If you got any questions, please comment below. Thank you.